Good morning. In this discussion, we will be tackling about one of the four leadership principles which guided the individual Jesuits and formed the basis of Jesuit corporate culture. In this presentation, we will answer the following question. What is self-awareness for the Jesuits? How may we apply self-awareness in our daily lives to become great leaders? Why should we care about self-awareness? What happens if we don't have self-awareness? And is it challenging to practice self-awareness? So what does self-awareness means? It is when one understands who they are and what they value. When one grasps the idea that they have weaknesses and unhealthy blind spot. And it is the ability to recognize and understand one's moods, emotions, and drives. In other words, self-awareness is a deep understanding of who we really are, from the things we value to our weaknesses and even unhealthy blind spot. Having self-awareness is having a sense of vision of what we wanted to do in our lives and the things we stand for. It is by this that we are capable of grasping the idea of who we really are despite the chaotic world around us. One must not forget that self-awareness is never a finished product. Why? We live in a complex and ever-changing world, and every day we adapt to these changes. And as we reflect to these changes, we open new perspective.
For the Jesuits, the disciplines they learned from their orientation and spiritual exercises became their lifelong habits and deeply set values. Their self-awareness program was focused on identifying their strengths, weaknesses, values, and worldview, and involved deep reflections and checking of attitudes and motivations, all talked through with a spiritual guide. The practice of self-awareness in our daily lives is important if we are to become successful leaders. Through daily reflections and self-assessment, a leader may know themselves enough to an extent that they may lead with confidence in behalf of the people who look up to them. If we know ourselves and our limitations, we rid ourselves of arrogance and open ourselves to humility. Self-awareness is an important attribute to acquire and master, not only for the Jesuits, but also for people of every religion and belief. It is crucial to be aware of one's own strengths and weaknesses, that we may know ourselves better to live a good life in the pursuit of happiness.
Here are some ways to apply self-awareness. First, look at yourself objectively. Trying to see yourself as you are can be a very difficult process. But if you make the right efforts, and getting to know your real self can be extremely rewarding. When you can see yourself objectively, you can learn how to accept yourself and find ways to improve yourself in the future. Second, we need to write down our goals, plans, and priorities. We need to plan out our goals so they turn from ideas into a step-by-step process, breaking down our larger goal into mini goals so it seems less overwhelming and easy to tackle it head on. Lastly, we need to perform daily self-reflection. To have self-awareness, we must do self-reflection. This requires setting aside some time, hopefully every day, to honestly look at ourselves as a person and as a leader. Committing to this practice can help us improve. It's not easy to develop this level of observation. Most people, including myself, are afraid to be truly honest with ourselves about our strengths, our weaknesses, and current challenges. But if we implement the right effort, then we will develop a level of self-awareness that will help us grow as a person.
Why should we care about self-awareness? Well, we should care about self-awareness because it leads us to have a better understanding of ourselves. We are then given the options to make changes and to build on our areas of strength, as well as areas where we want to improve. When we start to comprehend this idea, we could have the chance and opportunity to change things about ourselves, empowering us to make a day-to-day existence that we need. Having clarity about what our identity is and what we need can be empowering and giving us the certainty to make changes. Having a clear understanding of our thoughts and behavior patterns will also help us to understand other people. This means that we need to focus on understanding ourselves first before we can really say that we understand others.
We should care about self-awareness because aside from how we understood ourselves and what we value, it will lead and help us to determine whether we are on the right path, in the assurance that we cannot be drawn to some sort of unhealthy, unguided side or weaknesses that can destroy us. Exercising the value of self-awareness as a guide to have a better vision that will conquer and inspire others to do so. A person having the ability to reflect on self-strengths and weaknesses is the starting point of self-leadership skills. The skill of having reflective thinking exercises leaders' ability to learn about self and others. In order for a person to rectify or compensate for his weaknesses or flaws, he must first realize and own his weaknesses. Self-awareness is the starting point for leadership development. That leadership development involves a process of self-reflection, developing self-awareness, and self-cultivation, a process of cultivation and growth. Such a process leads to behavioral change.
What happens if we don't have self-awareness? When people lack self-awareness, they often have difficulty in admitting their mistakes, which is often a sign of insecurity and/or immaturity. If they can't acknowledge even the smallest mistakes they've made, it could be possible that they fear the feeling of being inadequate or not enough. In their minds, they can do no wrong, which rarely happens in reality. It's not that they think they're better than others, but simply because they lack self-awareness. Conscious, self-aware people understand that it's okay to be vulnerable, that we're only human and that we often come short. Admitting our mistakes is a great sign of self-awareness, suggesting that we understand the idea that mistakes don't define who we are, but it's what we do about them that matters most. The ability to admit mistakes takes courage and vulnerability, which gives us the humility to admit that we are imperfect beings with much to learn, a necessary step in becoming self-aware.
One may ask, is it challenging to practice self-awareness? Well, cultivating self-awareness is indeed challenging. We cannot deny that we live in a world where everything around us vie for attention and claim authority and legitimacy, which often leads to confusion. However, one can exhibit this as long as he or she is willing to do so. This willingness will be their driving force to keep on reflecting and achieve a deep sense of understanding. Because people who tend to do better in the things they do and in reaching their goals are those who have a deep sense of understanding of their own self.